Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield. Exploring the world one glass at a time. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity. Helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
There's a better life if I could be debt free, but all my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.
Hello and welcome to the Money Doctor Show. I'm Dr. Frances Rayam, president of Power Down Debt, a positive debt management company. We're fortunate enough to have a real author in the studio today who is so prolific. He's written at least 7 books and a bunch of other works, and off camera tells me he's got about 30 in the works. So I'd like to welcome to the set Wilson Roberts from Greenfield. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for doing this.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Now,
okay. Well,
storytelling.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit of background on you first. You taught at GCC for
31 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's got to be a bunch of stories there, but
I'm sure there are, but they're classified.
Of course they are. Did you always know that you wanted to write?
Since I was a little kid, I really did. Yeah.
And you taught writing, creative writing?
Taught primarily writing. Yeah. My first years there, I taught a lot of literature courses, but it seemed increasingly parasitic, so I just went to writing.
Okay. Tell me about when you were a little kid, the first things that you wrote. Do you remember?
Well, I do, funny enough. I was on the playground at our elementary school in Newtown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And I was chasing a ball, and I ran down the hill, and there in the gutter, right by the side of the road, was a thumb.
A thumb?
A thumb, a human thumb.
A human thumb?
Human thumb. Never knew why it was there or how it got there. And so my first novel, which was probably about a scrawled, handwritten page long, was called The Thumb in the Gutter. And it had just grown from there. My latest one, as you can see, is a little longer.
You wrote about a page and you were 8 or 9 years old?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so the thumb has grown into All That Endures?
It has,
Not
yes.
quite. How many pages is All That Endures?
774.
Yeah, just a tad more. And I have to say, while I'm touching this, because they won't be able to tell on TV, I love the feel of the cover.
I do too.
It's this weird sort of satiny, velvety texture.
That one and the most recent one, Murder in Coral Bay, have the same textured cover. And my publisher asked me, he said, "Do you like that?" And I said, "I really do." He said, "I do too," but that's all he told me, so I can't give you any further information on it.
Give us a little synopsis of All That Endures. I'm going to ask you if you'll read something from it as well. But,
okay.
This is set locally, sort of.
Yeah, it's set in Wessex County, Massachusetts.
Wessex County,
which shares borders very similar to those of Franklin County. Mm-hmm. The county seat is Graham. And most of the action in the story is set in a little hill town called Keatsville. And essentially it's about a group of people in the early 60s who moved to Keatsville. There's 2 brothers from West Texas, Brud and Reggie Hicks. And they, while living in New York, while Brud's in graduate school, meet these cousins, both named Gwendolyn. Mm-hmm. Who come from very wealthy Boston families, and their parents jointly own a farm in Keatsville. And they decide, all of them, the 4 of them, they're going to start an intentional community. Yeah, you described them as
too old to be beatniks, too young to be hippies?
Right.
What does that make them?
It makes them founders of an intentional community in Keatsville, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Experimenters.
Yep.
And the novel was really about the suspicions that the natives of Keatsville have about these outsiders coming in.
Yeah.
And the discomfort that the outsiders feel with the locals, and how over the years those communities, those separate communities, the intentional community and the traditional community, adapt to one another.
Yeah, they sort of have to. It's almost like biosphere, right? They're thrown into the mix and they have to figure out how to swim.
Absolutely.
Right?
And really the hero of that part of the story, although that's a loose term, is the owner of the general store who extends credit to these new people, and that's how they sort of begin to integrate themselves into the community.
Yeah, they're very upset about I-91 coming through.
Yeah, well, there's this old character by the name of Leo Dennison, who's an arms dealer in the town, and he has only one eye, which gives him less than 3D vision, and he talks about the interstate, which is coming up the highway, is that damned intersnake highway,
yes,
which is just going to destroy our way of life here. And he is the one who is the greatest impediment to the integration of the intentional community with the traditional community. Although he's my favorite character, actually, in the novel,
I have to reference a quote in my head about Ernest Hemingway, or that Ernest Hemingway said something about writing characters. Do you know that quote? And when a novelist writes a character, they should write, I'm paraphrasing, of course, they should write about a person, not about a character, because a character is a caricature.
Well,
So
that's true.
How do you develop a character?
They develop themselves.
They do?
They really do. Now, I realize that's a glib answer that every writer will give you. You know, you create these people, and then they tell you what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But in a sense, that's what really happens for me, at any rate. I liken the writing process to the dreaming process, in the sense that a lot of what happens subconsciously, and it's not until you read your first draft that you can say, oh, I see what I'm doing now.
Really?
And then I begin to work with it and shape it more.
Do you keep a notepad by your bed and
Nope.
literally hear anything in your dreams? No?
Oh, I hear things in my dreams,
But
but
you
I don't
wake
write
up
them
and
down
write
now.
them down? No.
No, I like to sleep too much to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you journal as a kid?
Never.
No.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
No.
So what is the process like for you when you decide, I think I want to write a book, or can you not decide it? Does it just happen to you? The stuff is flowing so quickly. You have
I
to
don't
write it
really
down.
decide to write a book.
You don't?
For example, this monstrosity, which is a good deal, incidentally, because you can use it as a doorstop when you finish reading it, started as a short story.
Yeah. A short story.
A short story.
Wow.
And the opening chapter was really the short story, was going to be the short story.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't stop writing about the characters and what was happening to them and where they were going.
You know, I can't remember who else said this, but it was another famous author, and they said they basically, they find a character in their head, they create a person, and then they just follow them around and try and keep up with what they're doing. They just try and write down whatever the character is doing as fast as they can. In their mind,
That's another
kind
way
how
of
it works.
explaining the same thing, yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
That the story evolves.
Yeah. Would you be willing to read even just the first 2 paragraphs of maybe page 1 or something else that you'd like to read? But I was locked in on the first 2 paragraphs. I thought you learned so much in the first 2 paragraphs of this. Really, it was amazing. In 2 paragraphs, you learned so much about these characters.
The sun behind them, shadows long in front of them. 2 brothers from West Texas rode into the Lower East Side in 1960, driving a yellow 1950 Oldsmobile convertible, its paint peeling, its tires nearly bald. Crossing the Hudson River, Bud Hicks looked at the view of Manhattan from the crest of the George Washington Bridge and patted the steering wheel. He smiled at his younger brother, Reggie, sure they had left behind a hard-scrabble legacy that promised little more than the agonies of their fathers and grandfathers' hard and fruitless labors. 5 years earlier, their father, Ralston Hicks, had taken the Olds in partial trade for his ladders, scrapers, and brushes, along with a '55 Ford F-100 pickup. His job of painting street-side mailboxes for the post office had ended following a 3-week bender during which Ross woke up in an alley outside the American Bar in Juarez, 350 miles from Lubbock, where he lived and worked, a knife wound in his shoulder, his wallet gone, his pockets empty. It took him another week to make his way back home.
How do you not buy that book based on those first 2 paragraphs?
I think everybody should buy this book.
Seriously. Now, Thank you for reading that,
Yeah.
and so well, of course. Storytelling. You know, tell me about why you think storytelling is important, and what is it?
Because our
cathartic?
lives are stories.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody tells stories. Some people in more detail than others. Some people can just drive you nuts, and you want to get away from them. But we're all compelled to tell stories, and the stories of our lives, and we make them up, you know, to a large degree.
Yeah.
We edit our lives.
What do you think
our
makes a good
storytelling.
storyteller?
Someone who can, you're talking of oral storytelling right now, I assume.
Either.
Or that's
Well,
what I'm
yes,
talking
let's do
about at
oral
any
first
rate.
and
Yeah.
then talk about writing, sure.
What makes a good oral storyteller? Someone who can directly engage the audience. For example, if you're a storyteller telling a story to a bunch of little kids, they'll tell the story with you.
Yes.
You know, say, well, the giant walked into the room. And I'll say, yeah. And he did this and he did that. And I'll look up and say, well, how did you know that? Of course he did that, you know.
Oh,
so
that's
they
great.
tell the story with you. So you need to be able to respond to the audience, whether it's little kids getting excited and getting involved in the story, or whether it's adults sitting there and you see them going, yeah, you know, and then you sort of look at them and tell the story to them. If you're going to tell a story, you should never memorize it. That's a mistake.
Yep.
It's telling a story is a kind of a verbal jazz.
Oh, I love that.
You-
a verbal jazz.
That you're improvising constantly as you go along, and you're finding rhythms for the story that correspond to the reactions you're getting from the audience, and things of that sort.
Do you do a lot of public speaking, public storytelling?
Not anymore. I used to,
You did, yeah.
but I haven't in a long time. Not since I'm retired, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You retired in 2001?
2001.
2001, yeah.
When I
Do you
knew I
miss
could
it?
never read another freshman English paper.
You don't
Yeah.
miss it.
No. No, I don't.
Do you miss the students?
Yeah.
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 One of your students, if I have the story correct, is your publisher of all
That's
these
correct.
books.
Warren Lapine was a student of mine in the mid-'80s.
In the mid-'80s.
In the
And this book
mid-'80s.
is actually dedicated to him.
This one is.
Yeah,
yes.
I was pretty impressed by
Yep.
that.
He has
as he
been.
must be.
He has been incredibly supportive of my work over the years, and I just said for Warren Lapine for his support and hard work to bringing my stories to print,
Wow.
And,
It's very, very kind.
and he deserves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the story between you and he? Did you make the relationship when he was in school?
Well, it's a funny story,
And
and,
keep it?
and he tells it sometimes. He was not a particularly good writer as a student. And I remember saying to him, he was determined to write. He wrote science fiction stories. And he was determined to write, and I said, you know, Warren, the only thing you have to do is you just got to write and write and write. And he did. And he started publishing science fiction in reputable science fiction magazines. Then he started his own science fiction magazine.
Really?
I think the original title of it was Harsh Mistress. And after several issues, it became Absolute Reality,
Huh.
I think, at any rate. And then he started his own publishing business. And he bought several old magazines and published them, and now he publishes books, and his
Wow.
bestseller actually is The Constitution.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
So there's an example of somebody that maybe wasn't going to make it as a writer, or maybe wasn't going to be as famous as a writer as they might have hoped, and found another way to...
But he did become very well known and respected as
He
a
did,
writer.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. He became
Oh,
a
interesting.
very strong writer because
All
he was
through
he
write,
was determined.
write, just keep
he
on
was
writing.
absolutely determined.
Huh.
Yeah.
So let's see, do you have a favorite story of a student that you taught besides him?
Do I have? God, there's so many, Francis. I don't think I could really come up with one other than. And this is a funny story. My wife was my student.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I met her in 1972, and I was the only person from the time she started college until she finished law school who gave her less than an A. And she got a B+ in my class, which is still a bone of contention between us because she's insists.
You ruined her
She deserved
credit
it,
card.
right.
I mean, her credit report.
So for our
credit report,
25th wedding anniversary.
Report card is what I'm trying to say,
exactly right. Her transcript.
Yes, the transcript.
Right.
Yeah.
At any rate, for our 25th wedding anniversary, I sent in a grade change form for her.
Oh, no.
And raised her grade to an A.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I did.
Oh, that's hysterical.
The registrar never responded to that. Probably appropriately.
How many years had it been? 25th wedding anniversary. How long from the time you met her until the time you married?
5 years.
5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years later.
Right.
I bet they got a great chuckle over it, though.
They've
when they
never
got
said
it.
a word to me. As a matter of fact,
Really?
the retired faculty and staff has a luncheon once a month where we get together, and I vowed that I'm going to ask her next time I see her why she never responded to that.
That's funny.
Maybe she's seen this and
That's funny. We need to take a break for a moment, but when we
Okay.
come back, I want to talk to you about what you're working on now, your process. Maybe you'll have a good story for us
Okay.
that you'll be able to tell us. Okay?
Sure.
All right. We'll be back in a moment with Will Roberts.
Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Dr. Glenn Brooks at the office of Glenn Brooks and Spa on the Green. 413-565-4400. drglennbrooks.com. Video Broadcast Services. Complete marketing services for your business. 480-200-4222. Videobroadcastservices.com. Richard Wiedegartner, LMT. Neuromuscular Massage Therapy. For pain relief, call 413-773-5775. rwmassagetherapy.com. Magic Wings Butterfly Conservatory. 4,000 butterflies flying year-round. 413-665-2805. magicwings.com.
Welcome back to the Money Doctor Show. My guest today is Wilson Roberts, local author, and I've asked him straight out of the break to read a bit from his book. I love it when authors will read what their favorite passages are out of the book.
And this is one of my favorite passages in the book. One of the main characters is this elderly resident of Keatsville by the name of Raymond Stearns. And Raymond is kind of the local mystic.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes back to the farm where these group of people have set up their intentional community. Mm-hmm. And he visits the land. Raymond Stearns stood on the plowed driveway of Walden Brook Farm a few yards from a slight concavity in the deep snow cover that marked where the Keats farmhouse had once been. His 6-foot 3-inch frame slightly stooped, he wore an ancient pair of beans, Maine hunting boots, khaki work pants, and a red and black checkered wool coat, his head covered in a weather-worn fedora with an eagle feather in the band. The farmhouse had burned to the ground in a fire late in 1944, and the foundation was filled in long ago, but the fill had been soft, and the ground had sunk so much that in the center it was 6 inches lower than that of the old dooryard, where high, unruly lilac branches reached through the snow. Once ornamental bushes along the front of the yard, they had grown wild and spread unattended until they formed a ragged copse. Summer shelter to small ground-dwelling animals and birds. In the winter, they were bare gray sticks outlined against the frozen field in which they stood, the branches clacking together like thin bones in the wind. It was 5:45 in the afternoon of March 9th. The sun, low on the horizon, sent a pale yellow light over the landscape that cast Raymond's shadow in a long ashen streak across the snow. Twilight was minutes away. Winter was nearly over. There would be no more snow, no doubt. There always was, sometimes as late as the first days of May, especially in hill towns such as Keatsville. But each day the sun was higher in the sky, the days longer by noticeable minutes. The sun, when it would shine, was warm on the skin of his face and arms. Leaning over, he tucked his trousers into woolen socks that stuck up 4 inches above his boots and stepped into the mid-calf deep snow. Trotting through feral lilacs, his arm bent in front of his eyes to fend off their branches, he came to stand at the edge of the sunken ground. He imagined the house as he remembered it, an ancient and huge white center chimney colonial to which someone in the late 19th century had long ago added a wide front porch. he'd courted Lucy Keats on that porch.
Oh, how nice. How nice.
Yeah.
We've been talking about you being a local artist, a local author from Greenfield, writing art. But you also winter in St. John.
I do.
So, and the newest book, Murder in Coral Bay, is
Murder in Coral Bay,
set in
yes.
St. John.
Yeah.
So, and well, I should say that this book is not on the shelves yet. This is your draft copy to proof.
This is a draft copy, although I will be signing copies of it at the World Eye
On May 10th.
on May 10th.
Which
yes.
we'll do at the end of the show, too, to make sure people know about it.
Yes, we need to remind people of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a perfect time to do that.
Yeah.
Can you describe for us the difference between being here in Greenfield, Mass. or in Pioneer Valley and being in St. John for the winter?
It's warmer.
It's warmer,
It's
for
warmer.
sure.
Yeah, especially this past winter. St. John, where we live in St. John, Coral Bay, is an interesting community. It's kind of like southern Vermont, western Massachusetts moved south.
Really?
It is.
Okay.
It is. There's a really strong sense of community there.
Yeah.
It's well, actually, Coral Bay is the main character in this novel.
Really?
So
That's
if you
nice.
read this novel, you'll get a good sense of Coral Bay. It's one of those end of the world places, where
Yeah.
people sort of gravitate when they don't know what they're going to do with their lives or where they're going to go, and they go further and further south. Patagonia is another one. Key West is another one
Right,
of those kinds
sure.
of communities. El Paso used to be,
Yeah.
where people just sort of say, well, we're here. Our past lives don't matter.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
You don't need to know my name. Just call me Pirate Bill
Yeah.
or Tommy No Legs or whatever.
The anonymity sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the cover of this. You did the cover of this book yourself.
I did the cover. As I said to you earlier, it's a fifth grade construction paper cover. I just
love it.
was sitting at my dining room table saying, I don't know what to do with the cover for this book, and I started cutting out pieces of construction paper that my granddaughter had left lying around.
How nice.
And I got that.
That's sweet. Does your granddaughter take credit for it?
None.
None?
None.
She will. She will as she gets
Yeah,
older. How old
right.
is your granddaughter?
That particular one I was thinking of then is just 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many kids do you have? How many children?
Grandchildren?
How many grandchildren?
7.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. It's a big family.
It is, and we're very lucky because 4 of them are right here in town.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. There was a quote, I'm bouncing between your books, but we have plenty to bounce between. There is a quote in the front of All That Endures that is actually from the character.
It is.
I found this fascinating because the use of it makes him real. It's a fictional book, but he's real. He's quoted alongside Shelley.
He is.
Would you?
And
look it up?
deservedly so, I think.
Yeah.
His quote is, "Moral center, moral schmenter. We're just a bunch of critters like any other critters getting through the messes we create day by day."
Yeah.
Ralston G. Hicks, Jr.,
Yes.
who was known as Brud in the story. And when I wrote him saying that, I'm trying not to say when he said it, but he really did say it.
He did say it.
It just struck me as emblematic of his character.
Yeah.
And I wrote it down on a little piece of paper on my desk. I said, I'm going to use that somehow somewhere else. And that's where it ended up.
It makes him real before we ever get to the first page.
Well, that's good.
It did for me anyway.
Yeah.
You turn a phrase wonderfully, of course. Every author would love to hear that, I'm sure. But
That's
you
nice.
turn a phrase a specific way. For instance, when you were reading that passage and you said, you used a simile that the branches clack together like thin bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's so graphic, and I've never heard anybody say it that way, but you get it right away. And there were a couple of passages, things that I read, like a wound that stinks of infection. I mean, really, you found a severed thumb on the side of the road. You wrote a wound that stinks of infection. I mean, you can't miss that sort of description. There was another thing, on page 9, you had so much in detail. Wore his hair sticked down with wild root cream oil.
Yeah.
What the heck is wild root cream oil, and where did you get that?
That marks me, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Wild root cream oil, when I was in high school, was a very popular treatment for guys' hair.
Really?
And it really, you know, if you wanted it really slicked down with your pompadour going up and your DA, you know, just in place in the back of your hair. And they actually had an ad. It was a jingle that I still remember. Use wild root cream oil, Charlie. You can't keep the girls away.
I love it. I love that you would sing that for us. That's great. And it shows my age too. I didn't know what wild root cream oil was.
I don't know whether
I'm
it's, you know,
sorry to
now
say,
I don't know whether it's still on the market or not.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
You make references in here also to guitars, specific references like a D18, a Martin, or a Gibson. You're a musician. You gave yourself away a little bit with the jazz comment earlier.
Yeah, I am.
You are. What do you play?
I play guitar.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you played your whole life?
No, I started when I was 19.
Did you? Yeah. Yeah. And acoustic or electric?
Acoustic.
Acoustic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you drag it with you to St. John? Do you have one?
No,
down
I
there?
have one down there.
You do have one down
I have what's called a rain song down there, which is a completely all graphite guitar.
Interesting.
It's very nice for two reasons. One of which, one thing that drives guitar players nuts is when they drop their pick in the hole.
Yes.
And you've got to take it up and shake it, and there are all the struts inside, and it's impossible
happens
to get
to all
out.
of us.
The
Yes.
rain song, since it's a molded guitar,
Yeah.
has no interior structure, so you pick, just turn it up, and your pick comes sliding right out.
Oh, that's
And the
funny.
other thing is it stays in tune.
It does stay in
Yeah,
tune because of the
it's-
graphite.
yeah.
Nothing bends. Yeah. Nothing moves.
And at the same time, it's the size of a Gibson J200, and it just has this incredible bass response.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Huh. I'll have to check that
So
out.
that's a commercial for rain song.
That's great. I'll look it up myself.
Yeah, they're
actually.
great guitars.
Okay, so you're always writing. You have how many things in the works right now? You said in your computer or in your mind 30?
Well, I think there are about
something
30
works?
finished novels, including these, of course.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you're revising something.
I
wanted to
am.
ask
I
you
wrote
about
it
this.
in the mid-'80s. I wrote a trilogy of mysteries set on an imaginary Caribbean island, St. Ursula, which is somewhere between St. Thomas and Tortola. And I've been revising them. They needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
They weren't up to my current standards. So,
What's that like to go back and look at your earlier work? Is it useful to you? Do you cringe when you see it?
no, I don't cringe, but I'm always amazed at what I've written because I don't remember it. I mean, I can pick this thing up
Yep.
and read a passage. I don't remember writing that.
Yeah, it wrote itself sort of, right?
Yeah,
You
well,
lost it.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. We only have about 2 more minutes
Okay.
left, so I wanted to talk about your the book signing that's coming up
Mm-hmm.
and what you see for yourself in the future.
Well, at age 77, looking into the
Are you
future,
77?
yeah,
You look great,
Looking
yeah.
into the future is kind of terrifying. I have nothing going on right now in my writing except the revising of those 3 novels. I don't have a new project, and I
Well,
haven't.
you're just beginning to promote these books here, so
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what do I see in the future? I don't know. More writing, more traveling, more family time.
At some point, when you're not walking this earth writing anymore, what
Mm-hmm.
would you like people to say about you? How would you like to be remembered?
Now, there was a character.
Oh, what a great comment.
Why not? Yeah.
Had you been asked that question and thought about it before, or was that
Never.
right off the cuff?
Never thought about it before.
It's a
I
wonderful
don't think about
answer.
what I want to have people remember me for,
Yeah,
other than my kids.
that was a wonderful
Yeah.
answer. Your kids, yeah. So the book signing, tell us about the book signing.
Book signing, May 10th at 11 o'clock at the World Eye,
At Main Street, Greenfield.
Main Street, Greenfield.
Great little
There are
bookstore.
copies of, I think, all my books available there. There are copies of my books available at Boswell Books.
Okay,
Turners Falls, they're available on Amazon.
yep,
Or if people want personally signed copies,
yes,
they can come to the book signing, or they can stop me on the street.
and meet you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to do this interview with you. Thank you
It was
so
a-
much for
It was
coming.
a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Until our next chat, Wilson Roberts and I will remind you to keep it positive.
There's a better life if I could be debt free. But oh, my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. she got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.